and welcome to another edition of Pulp Picks. My name is Patrick.
I'm Fritz.
And we're here to give you this week's reading recommendations on New Comic Book Day. We got a bunch of goodies here.
Yeah.
111.
Yeah, all number ones
today. It's been a month or more since we've done that. So, so what have you got for us today, Fritz?
Yeah, so my pick this week is My Adventures with Superman #1. If you can guess, this is based off the cartoon, which just started its second season, which they've actually got an ad for on the back.
Yeah, off to a good start, too.
Yeah. So this comic, it's kind of set between, like, the events of seasons 1 and 2, just kind of, like, bridging a gap, filling in, like, what they were doing in between. And it's actually, I think I mentioned this because she does, like, the Murder Ball, Death Ball comic that I've picked a couple times on here. Sophie Campbell. She's also one of the writers on the show, and she's doing the tie-in comic for it. So like it really like feels like it's not, because you get that a lot with tie-in stuff where it's just like they just kind of like hand someone something just like, hey, this is part of this, but they're not either like super familiar or they're not giving like a lot of notes. So, like this is a person like actively involved with the show, so like everything happening here like feels like this is like important to these characters, like the emotions that they're feeling and like the fights that they have to deal with, like there's like an actual weight to it that you don't get with a lot of tie-in comics. But no, it like much like the show, it's very fun, like the interpersonal dynamics, like Jimmy's just like all over the place. Like there's this great bit where like the Daily Planet's like tilting and he's trying to distract everyone from seeing Clark run off by like talking to them about subterranean dinosaur people. Like you get more of like the tension between like Superman and like the different like government groups that are trying to like deal with the fact like, hey, there's a guy that can just like fly around and like level a city block if he wants to, like, even though like obviously it's Superman, he's a good guy, he's not going to do that. But no, it's you get that, you get like obviously you can't tell like some really cute Lois and Clark moments from the cover here, which also has its own tension because of her dad being who he is. I don't know. It's just the best part I can say about it, despite the fact that I was saying like, oh, it's a great like China comic. Honestly, even if you haven't been watching the show, like it really does work as its own little standalone thing. Like it does that great thing that a lot of times do, where like if you're not familiar, you can jump right in. If you are familiar, then you're getting like little bits of like, oh, you like kind of like to see how these characters are starting to like interweave in these, like some new characters show up in here that I don't believe have shown up in the show at all that I can remember, and now I'm curious like, oh, are they going to show up in the show?
Yeah,
that'd be really cool.
Yeah, well, and since the writers are tied on, that's a possibility.
Yeah. Also the art, I'm not familiar with the artist here. Let me double check their name. Pablo Collar. I really like their stuff. Like they capture the animated feel. Yeah.
It's not exactly like the show, but it's definitely in the vein of... boy, Amanda Waller is getting to be DC's just kind of de facto boogie person, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the interesting things in this issue. They kind of have like, oh, maybe there's like another group that's like got similar intentions to her, but like doing their own thing. So like It does what old good issue 1 should do, and we'll get into that with our other 2 picks, where like they leave enough like unresolved to be that like they got that hook in you, like you want to know what's going to happen next. Like you got all these little dangling mysteries, like what's the deal with this weird robot that's like freaking out, like why is government lying about it, like why is the government fighting itself? How is Superman going to spend his first Christmas in Metropolis? All questions that have not been answered, and I really want to know the answers.
There's from season 1 to season 2, there was a bit of a jump, so it is a good place to drop in a comic and fill in those gaps. I'm excited for it. The show exceeded my expectations. We talked about it quite a bit once the trailers started dropping, and how the look and the feel was so good. And DC's handling Superman so much better just across the board now than they have for quite a while.
It's wild that this is probably like the strongest like line of like, even when we're just talking like the main Superman books, not even like the little like other stuff like this or any of the other Elseworld stuff, like easily the strongest line of Superman books in like I don't know how long. Really.
The House of Brainiac story has been very good so far. So, and just the approach to Superman, and I think they laid a lot of good groundwork at the beginning of this whole rebirth era. But yeah, very cool. Yeah, well,
Speaking of shadowy government stuff.
shadowy government stuff, I picked Image's Scarlet #1. And Kelly Thompson has been writing a number of books that I've been enjoying, so I was very excited for this.
Birds of Prey also.
Yeah, Birds of Prey has been exceptional. It's been so good, and it's one of those books that people come in and quote. Like they talk about a scene from it, or they quote a character from it, and when that's happening, you know that it's really striking a chord. So we saw the first couple pages in previews from the other Energon Universe books, and they really piqued my interest. So at the beginning of it, it's Scarlet going in on a covert op. So what this whole Energon Universe has done really well is tapping these legacy characters, getting the core aspects of them, their character traits done really well, and then putting them into kind of a more modern, updated situation that's really interesting. And Scarlet is no exception. I always really enjoyed Scarlet as a character, and growing up with G.I. Joe coming out, you just never really questioned that they had a pretty, for the time, a very broad base of characters. So for one of the original characters in the toy line launch to be a female Joe operative who carried a crossbow and did, missions that involved a lot of subterfuge and It's really cool. And then, there's very different story arcs for Scarlet depending on where you're familiar with her. If you're more familiar with the cartoon, she's kind of the strong-willed, she can keep up with anybody on the team kind of character, and she's always in the middle of everything, making a big difference. Not that that's not the way that it is in the comics, but her alluded to romantic interest is Duke in that.
Yeah.
In the comics, she's much more a martial artist, and she's,
which in this they're definitely tapping into more.
Exactly, and her romantic interest is Snake Eyes, and there's a whole backstory there as to why. But she's, a lot more tied to the whole Ninja Clan arc. So this does, I think, an interesting job of, we're not sure where they're going to go with her character so far, but there's definitely ninja stuff going down.
Lots of ninja stuff. One of the things I really liked about this is, because with the previous two Joe books, like Duke and Cobra, they were very intertwined with, the, revelation of, the Transformers being a thing to this world, very much, a call and response to that.
Yeah.
Whereas this is the first of the Joe books where it's just this is just Joe stuff. It doesn't, at least as of right now, doesn't seem connected to any other, obviously there's elements of stuff from Duke and that crop up in this, but not as far as we can tell no Transformers, nothing has come up in here.
Well, and that might be based on where this is happening in the timeline.
Yeah.
Did they spell it out? I guess I was trying to speed read this one.
I feel the implication is it's definitely after Duke.
Maybe. But
I feel part of what's happening in what's going to be happening in the storyline is basically her getting auditioned to join the Joes.
Yeah, it's possible, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be that. It could be that this is strictly about the asset that needs to be recovered. That's out in the wild and needs to be recovered, which that's a whole thing too. I can't say too much, but
like I said, there's a lot of stuff kind of dropping here and just oh, what they weapon? What's the weapon?
Right, exactly. Yeah, very cool. The art is fun. It gets the martial arts stuff down really well. The action scenes are great.
There's like one double page spread that's just like her going through like a bunch of ninjas. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good. It's one of those where this book really benefits from the modern comic book art craftsmanship because the motion blurs and everything really work well in this one. But and again, the whole thing, the writer, the artist, the inker, the colorist, all of it works really well. And Skybound has done a great job of really thinking of this as an entire package that is a cog in the greater machinery of the Energon universe. And you can feel the care that they're taking to really create this this world in that they really want it to be sustainable and something that they can continue to tell stories in. They're not just going to tell a shocking story and make everything really difficult just to try to get people's attention off the bat. They're really, the craftsmanship they're putting in is great. Speaking of world building, I'm sure people at home are just like, oh God, here we go. Another lame segue into the next book. But here we go.
Hey, I'm happy when we can actually come with a decent segue. But yeah, our joint pick this week is Ultimates issue 1. Like I've basically been threatening would be on here for months now.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise, right?
Like every other Ultimates book has been on here at least once. I think with like the exception of like maybe Black Panther issue 2, like every Ultimate book has been on.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But and the special that let in, I don't know that.
I think I might have picked that one. Oh, okay. Yeah. But anyway, so just a quick recap for the Ultimate books. The short version is Maker, Evil Reed from prior Ultimate Universe, came to this universe, used time travel shenanigans to basically screw it all up to his like quote unquote perfect world. Howard Stark found out, trapped him and the Maker in the city for 1,000 years because there's weird time dilation stuff.
Yep.
The Maker's like council, which is a bunch of like characters that used to be like heroes in like the normal Marvel universe who are now like bad guys, like the Hulk, Moon Knight, all kinds of
or at least they have the personas.
There's
not necessarily the exact same person.
Yeah, like they're kind of like they rule the world. Like countries and corporations as we know them don't exist in the same way. They're all just kind of like puppets of this like evil council. And to fight this council, we have the Ultimates.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, what this is Tony Stark is Iron Lad, along with Doom, Captain America, Sif, Thor, and as you can see from this cover, they are joined by Ant-Man and the Wasp. They are basically kind of like, the world sees them as terrorists. They're responsible for like the attack on Manhattan that you've seen unfold in Spider-Man.
Right, that is the narrative.
Responsible.
Right, that's the narrative that the whole world has been sold.
Yeah, and this is about them basically trying to like fight back and take down the Maker's Council, find a way to like get all the superheroes back that this world should have, stop the Maker once he gets out. Basically, the tagline for this book that the writer says is just like 18 months to save the world.
Yes. Yeah. And they're viewing the 616 universe and kind of using that as a bit of a blueprint. Like we would have been much closer to this. Things would be better if we had.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can kind of jumpstart some of these superheroes.
That's probably one of my favorite aspects of this is just like, because we've talked about this a lot with like the Spider-Man book where it's just like he knows he's supposed to be something better. He knows he's supposed to be something else. With the Ultimates, like they straight up like have like footage of the Maker had from the 616 universe where it's just like, oh, this is like they like truly see like all the potential they've lost because of him. Yeah. And in particular, there's like one character in here without saying who, like obviously doesn't have like the best reaction to finding out like what they're like in 616 because they're not like the best person there. Right.
And, probably had the best possible support person there to kind of talk them through that as they're grappling with it for a final time.
I absolutely adore Captain America in this comic because he is that perfect blend of like letting you know when you've messed up, but also like not like making a point of like rubbing your nose in, but it's just like, but we can do better. Come on, let's go.
Like, right, yeah.
I'm so happy that next issue, I think it looks like it's supposed to be like very much a Cap like specific issue because he's only really in half this issue because he's like spends half of it frozen still.
Right.
And just right away, he's instantly one of my favorite new versions.
I loved it. Loved it. And actually, Iron Lad I thought was great too.
Everyone, like, yep. I love, because like their version of Doom is this universe's Reed that the maker just like messed up real bad.
Yep.
So like he's not quite Doom, but he's definitely not Reed. He's like, you're not really sure what to make, because like your instinct is to be like, don't trust him, he's not good.
Right, yeah, well, he's wearing the mask, for crying out loud. And that is a great throwback to a classic Lee and Kirby alternate universe that Ben Grimm got caught in, where Reed became Dr. Doom instead. Yeah, you know, they're just doing such a great job. And again, if you take some of the core tenets of a character, throw them in a totally different situation, now you can get some interesting stories without having to do something that doesn't feel right.
Yeah, like everything, like, despite the fact that these are like different versions of these characters and there are like various radical like swings taken with them, like they also all feel like very true to like who they're supposed to be. Like I don't think we mentioned, but like very funny book. Like surprisingly like like
well, part of that is Janet is a great character in this book also.
Well, like, because they also play off, we mentioned this in like the Spider-Man book too, where it's just like Peter's not like great at being a superhero yet. And that also have like maybe like Cap, Thor, and Sif, like a lot of these guys aren't like, they're still like super new to doing anything. It's like their hearts are in the right place. Everything they're doing is to help people, but like they don't like quite got it yet. Like they're supposed to be like, oh, okay, we've got this like time machine. How can we use that? Should we use it? Kind of stuff.
What are
like,
the limits? What are we capable of?
We get some more insight into like the origin boxes, like Peter got, like how that went about as well as you think it would go. Yeah.
Well, and I thought that it was really fun that they were looking to make a statement, and so they left a mark for the whole world to be able to see, and it's going to be interesting to see how that as a symbol is going to be received going forward.
I think the line, remember we have boots too, might be one of my favorite lines in a comic. This entire, like, it's pretty good. That, like, the only thing in this issue that might top it is the bit where Cap's just like, the guy yelling in French is British?
Well, he was stuck in an ice cube for a long time, so, you know, he's not up on all the current events. Which
I do love that Dennis Camp, like, he's able to continue the thread that Hickman started of this universe is Captain Britain just being like, he's up there with like Skybound Starscream in terms of just like, oh, he's just like a horrible person.
Yeah.
Oh, and he loves being a horrible person, and it's just kind of fun to see him get his comeuppance all the time.
Yeah, he gives you a laundry list of terrible things that he's done in a brag.
Oh yeah, no, it's just awful. It's like it's fantastic. Also, I don't think that we've talked specifically about the team, but Dennis Camp, I was excited for this book regardless, but like him writing it, he did 20th Century Men back in 2022, 2023, which is probably one of my favorite books of all time.
Oh, wow.
He's done a couple other things here and there that are fantastic. Let me make sure I've got the artist name here right. Just a second.
Ferrari, right?
No, that was...
Oh, that was this one.
Yeah.
Juan...
Frigeri?
Frigeri, yeah.
Yeah. His stuff's great. If you've been reading Iron Man, he's been doing a lot of that recently.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Obviously, he's able to do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
great here.
It's really good. It's
his action scenes, his character work, like just there's there's just some of these expression shots where you just like you feel like so empathetically like what these characters are going through.
Yeah. And Captain America's suit looks great, and to me that can be a make or break on Captain.
Oh yeah, it's
you can overdo it and you can underdo it, and this is just right.
Yeah, like it's like. Because one of the things I like a lot of the design elements for this book specifically is like they're definitely like taking some stuff from like the Ultimate designs, but like tweaking them and updating them in like new and interesting ways.
Yeah,
that I just love so much. I really don't know how much more I can say. I'm sure I could probably go into detail on each page, but we do not have that kind of time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of time, we're running out. So what did you have as kind of your runner-up this week?
Not necessarily runner-up, but like lover, if you loved it, if you hated it, it's the end of the Krakoan era. So issue is both issue 35 of the current X-Men run, but also the Legacy 700th issue of Uncanny X-Men. That's out this week.
That was so good.
Yeah,
it was not what I was expecting.
It wasn't at the same time.
Sure.
You get all the Krakoan stuff wrapped up. You get a bunch of setup for what's coming next with From the Ashes titles coming out. You get a nice little story from Claremont, kind of now that they've figured out the whole Mystique, Destiny, Rogue, Nightcrawler situation, that whole family, and how it's a pretty typical X-Men family that it's really weird and uncomfortable for everyone involved.
Yeah, that was strange.
Yeah.
There were redemption arcs, there were irredeemable arcs, there's all kinds of stuff, and there are people who, even though things seem to have landed in a place that has promise, there are some people that are rejecting it. Even though that's what they've been working for. And so it's really interesting. I thought
also, old good X books, Alex Summers having a bad time at the end.
Yeah, not great.
But no, over to your
Fury, number 2 was really good. I think I picked number 1 as my pick, and there's the plot thickens.
Yeah.
But I'm really loving this creative team. It's been really good. And, when you can do a Punisher Max book post Steve Dillon and...
Jason Barrows is killing it.
Yeah, so good. And those are big shoes to fill because, what an iconic artist on Punisher stuff. So, very good. So, all right, well, we will be back next week with more picks. Be sure to read a bunch. Let us know what you think. Follow, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we'll be back. Until then, enjoy the reading.
I do love the bit where he's talking about how could someone like Frank Castle just kind of sneak around Hanoi? Honestly, the only answer I can give you is he only ran into idiots.
Yeah.